This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Pam Buchanan on the show. She is the founder of Quantum Sense. She founded it a couple years ago, and it is a pioneer in health innovations, especially for not just mental health, but also mind, body, soul, et cetera. So with all that, we're going to talk a lot about her journey and what it is that we leaders need to do today to stay healthy. Anyway, Pam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background, how you got to where you are, and what is it exactly that you do over at Quantum Sense?
Wonderful. Yes, I am a 40-year career veteran in corporate America. So I started back in the 80s. That seems like ancient times these days, but I had two very successful careers, one in financial services and the other in fintech. And I traveled and, met with leaders, CEOs, founders, bankers, lawyers, all sorts of corporate people in the corporate world, and learned quite a bit. But along the journey, as you can imagine, it's very, very stressful, especially traveling all those years. Puts a lot of stress on your body. But I enjoyed it. I had a fantastic career. But at the end, as it was winding down there, I thought, there's more to life than just, pounding the pavement, if you will, and ascending the corporate career ladder. And, why don't we talk about our depth of our humanness, right? And we talk about our physical bodies, we talk about our mental mind, but we don't really talk about our soul and what that brings, to the world, right? We're each here with a purpose, and, don't we want to show that soul being to our corporate people, to our clients, to our family, to our friends, and how can we start doing that? So, I transitioned from a very, successful career taking companies public. I, took Facebook public. I took Tesla public. So I worked with all the movers and the shakers at Silicon Valley. I tell people I lived in a bubble and I lived the future. So I am very futuristic, and I see where the world is going and the new skills that are needed, especially with the advent of AI, right? So AI is on fire. It's a partner with us. It's not going to take your jobs, but how can we work together with AI? And if AI is giving us all the intellect, what are we going to be giving our roles in corporate or in any business? And I believe, again, that goes to our soul being. And your soul is part of you. It's not religion. It's a part of you. We are mind, body, and soul. So you have to take care of each part of you. And I think the world has shown us we can take care of our minds and our bodies, but we need, again, to really take a look at what we're doing for our soul self.
So tell me this, you talked about how the soul is part of you. How would you define a soul exactly? Like, because it's one of those things where you can't weigh it, right?
No. And that's why that I don't want to say we've ignored it or we've handed it off to our religious, affinities, but it is a vibration inside of us, right? Truly is a vibration inside of us, and it's love based. Okay. So we only have, we've lived in this fear survival mode, right? I mean, and now the world is changing to a love based thrive mode. So again, maybe centuries ago, survival mode kept us alive. Probably did, right? And then we built structures around fear to keep certain people, at bay, if you will. But now that's changed. We've evolved. And we have iPhones, we have, airplanes and structures and high rises. And, they didn't have that back in survival mode with the log cabins and the huts and all of that. So we've evolved. No one can disagree that society has grown and looks different than it did 1,000 years ago. Well, guess what? It's going to look different in probably 30 years than it does now. And it's based on thriving and positivity. And with that, you've got to get to know your soul being and not be afraid because you can't see it. So why we attach to the body, to our mind, is that we can visualize that, right? You can visualize a physical body. If I said, what's your heart, what's your lungs, what's your stomach, everyone has a picture of that. So yes, let's start picturing. That's a great question. What does our soul look like? And our soul is the essence of us and what we portray to the people around us. And don't you want to speak out of positivity, or as I like to call it, it is love. It's not romantic love. It's just a positive vibe love, right? And if we get comfortable with that, I think we all will start taking care of our soul. And that's why I talk about soul health. And I start with the senses, because we were all born with our sensory being, right? So our 5 senses, they tell us a lot about our environment. So let's lift our head up out of the phone, out of the computer, and look around us. And what does your world look like? Is it colorful? Is it filled with positive people? What does it smell like? What does it sound like? I mean, you want to put positivity into your environment, and thus that will lift you up and give you a solid foundation to thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I think about that, what came to mind was I interviewed AJ Jacobs on the show probably a year or so ago, and he wrote a book called 1,000 Thank Yous, where he talks a lot about gratitude and the importance of gratitude. And for me, one of the practices he talks about is like before he goes to sleep, he will try to go through the alphabet A through Z and say something he's grateful for, starting with each letter, and so that was a little too extreme for me. But I started with just very simple. On my ride to drop the kids off at school, I would have them say 3 things that they're thankful for today before today starts, and try to get them in the mindset of thinking about gratitude. And for me, I don't know. I mean, they kind of, my older daughter, she kind of, shrugged her shoulders at it, rolled her eyes a little bit. But for me, after dropping them off, I was in a happier and better mood just hearing the things that they're grateful for.
Absolutely. And I do also, that is part of a soul practice, right? What are you grateful for? Mm-hmm. And every day, like I'm walking out and let's say I see a beautiful bouquet, flowers along the grass. I'm like, I'm so thankful for that beauty that is surrounding me. Like it's almost a minute by minute. Like if you start looking up and out and looking for the beauty, it will start to be more seen in your environment. And then let's say you have a couch that's old, 20 years old, you got it from grandma, it's brown, it's, not very comfortable. I tell people you can't not afford to get a new couch, because guess what? You walk in the room and you look at the couch and maybe your grandma wasn't a nice person. The negativity is there, right? Everything in your environment should exude some sort of positivity. Mm-hmm. So, you can curate that. You don't have to build a whole new home. You can put things like, a vase of flowers in your room. You can surround yourself with a color that brings you joy. Let's say, think of your children. What do you do for little girls? Oh, you want a pink room? Let's paint your room pink. Right? Because that brings her joy. You do that for children almost automatically. And that's why when children come in, they are their soul essence. It's society and all the the thoughts that are out there that maybe take them away from their soul essence. So start looking at how children play and interact, and what you're doing with your kids is wonderful. Their minds will automatically go to the gratefulness and the positivity. I'm around so many people that, friends and family that aren't grateful, right? They talk about the negative, and it's like, no, what are you grateful for? And yes, if there is a negative in your life, okay, let's fix it, right? Let's see if we can fix it. And then if we can't fix it, then let's say what we're grateful for, and that will outweigh what the negative is.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. How can we bring those practices or thoughts into the workplace and develop a culture of positivity?
Yeah. So the leaders, I talk with a lot of leaders, a lot of, employees, if you will. And I do start with the sensory environment. What are your senses telling you? And what can you do to bring, whether it is in your little area, some positivity, but you have to define what brings you joy, right? So you have to know yourself at your soul's essence to know what brings you joy. Let's say that I love let's call it the color pink, and you love the color blue. That's great. You should be surrounded by more of that color. I should be surrounded by more of the pink color. Let's say, how can I incorporate that into my life? Oh, my clothes. Let's say that my clothes are, dark colored clothes. Well, why can't I wear pink or bright colors to the office? Right? So let's start and analyze your sensory environment first. Then I go into, okay, how are you interacting with each other? Is it a love-based, I call it love-based conversation, or a fear-based conversation? If it is a fear-based and negative, if you will, conversation, how can I turn that into a love-based conversation? Or how can I walk away and think, that wasn't a very positive conversation. How could I have handled that? So really assessing, not minute by minute, but like you said, the author who went to bed every night, let's at the end of the day assess, what did I live out of the fear, the negative more today, or did I live out of the positive, the love today? So really assessing how you participate in your environment, and then also, what does your environment look like?
Now, can we take that? So it sounds to me like what you're talking about is kind of having a personal retrospective of the things that, you did well and didn't do well, or the times you were in fear behavior versus positive behavior.
Yes.
How can we take that into a team environment and make a team, do we incorporate that into a weekly retrospective, or what can we do to kind of
I think the lead
ourselves?
So what happens is the leader has to start leading with that positivity and assessing and saying, instead of going into, okay, we're in a crisis mode, you guys aren't selling enough, blah, 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 blah. Like we all automatically get into that. Oh my God, sales aren't there yet. How are we going to get more sales, more customers, more this, more that? But stop him or herself and say, okay, I'm going to start with the positive. Start with the positive and set that environment, right? Like, okay, here's the positives. Now, where is the improvement need to take place? And okay, here is our sales goal, and here's where we are. Okay, everyone, how can we get to that sales goal? And we need to get there in 5 days. So instead of, that angst that we all feel, I mean, again, you almost have to stop yourself, because it works itself up, right? And your boss is on you, you don't want to fail. It's in us not to want to fail. But instead, as the leader, you are leading that group, and you are creating that culture for that group of individuals. And you really, it does have to start with yourself. So you should lead from positivity, even though you may feel the fear.
Yeah. I think that's one of the hard things is like, as a leader, sometimes you're privy to more information than some of your employees, and sometimes it's negative information, and, you have to, know how to present that in a positive light. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example, but let's say you're not going to hit your sales goal or your quarterly goals, and which means people aren't going to get bonuses, and you have to figure out a way to like present that as an opportunity now or as a challenge that's it can be exciting. I mean, a new direction we get to try out and get to go in. And it reminds me of this video. I don't know if have you ever heard of Jocko Willink?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. He's a former Navy SEAL. He wrote some leadership books, and one of them is called like the Leader's Handbook or the Field Guide, Leader's Field Guide. And he's got another one called what is it? I don't remember. I'll link it up in the show notes. But he has this video where he talks about like he always says good. He said when anybody brings him a problem, he always answers with good. And he's like, you didn't get your promotion? Good. That means you have more time to work harder. You didn't get the raise. Somebody else got it. Well, good. That means you get to show them up next time. You get to prove that you're worthy. You get to take more time to develop, to grow. And every response of negativity, he responds with the word good. And
I love
it's just switching that mindset.
It really is switching the mindset. And what you have to do is you have to reset yourself, right? So let's say you got off the phone and your child is in distress or your spouse is upset about something. You have to walk into a meeting and be positive. You have to pause and reset. And if you're a few minutes late, it's worth it to pause and reset, right? And you have to, we are resetting and I'm going to be on the positive. And how am I going to start this meeting? On the positive. I need to start on the positive, even though we're way behind on our sales goal, right? And I'm stressed about it. I have to lead from positivity. And it's not fake positivity, right? It's not this rah, rah, let's go. Okay, you're doing a great job. Let's get out there and do it. Da, da, da. No, it's how you approach something, like with gratitude, right? You're saying approach it with gratitude. Okay, we've gotten this far. That's great. We need to go this far. Now, for stress for all of us, right? We're all in a stressful space, but let's not let that distract us from where we need to go, because we all know that positivity leads to better results, right? Thinking in that mindset of I can do this. I can get the job done. How am I going to get this job done? And then you reflect on what could have been done better. Let's say you don't meet the sales goals. What could have I have better, right? So, in my world as, an IPO director at Nasdaq, it was a 50-50 chance I would win the deal, right? So when you're going public, you have to, either list on the New York Stock Exchange or the Nasdaq. So I was up against, a win or lose situation. And you can't, is it realistic to win every single deal? Even though I want to win every single deal, that's not realistic, right? So, but I'm going to give it my best shot and I'm going to go in with a positive attitude. Here are my obstacles and here's where I can win, And so how can I overcome some of those obstacles? And that way I never got into a negative mindset because I already had a plan for those obstacles that I might encounter. So it's also, again, realistically setting out a plan and, you may need to change some of that plan as you go along, but that also keeps you on track and in the positive, if you will.
So what kind of advice would you have? Some people's minds and brains are wired a little differently, and they may have automatic negative thought syndrome, where they automatically go to the negative all the time and they have to, consciously force themselves to think about the positive. Or maybe they catastrophize every situation with thinking about like all the things that could go wrong. Therefore, they freeze and don't start. What advice would you have to them about starting something on the positive side?
I think it's just one little small step, right? Just one thing. So again, back to the daily life, you can say, okay, I have the money to go and feed myself. That's a positive, right? I have shelter. That's a positive. So it's almost that hierarchy that we all live in. Do we have shelter? And then we evolve, right? Higher. So I say, go back to the basics and say to yourself, okay, I'm in a good place. I've got a nice apartment. I got great roommates. I can go out and get a Starbucks if I want. So it's as simple as that. And that rewiring your mind to look at the positive. And think about it. Okay, let's say that you want to lose weight or you want to get physically fit. Do you think tomorrow you're going to be muscle man, right? No. You have to, set a plan and okay, this is going to take me 6 months to lose this many pounds or 6 months to put this much muscle on my body, but I have to stick to the plan. And that is going to lift weights. So it's almost like, okay, what weights am I lifting to keep me in my soul's essence? What am I doing to keep myself in my soul's essence? A gratitude practice is one of those ways. A sensory practice is one of those ways. So, and surrounding yourself and creating an environment that is positive is one of those ways. And I'm not saying, oh, we have to live in a fairy tale where everything is perfect, right? Because every day you're going to face challenges. But if you're living more in the positive, the soul essence of your being, you can handle the negativity that comes your way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So it really is, it's really the daily practices and stopping yourself, like acknowledging, oops, I'm going there, or surrounding yourself with people that say, like my dad can sometimes get to a negative. I'm like, no, Dad, don't go there. You can't go there. Stop it. You want those people around you that stops you from going down that negative path.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, when I think about like some of the things, a lot of times I don't recognize that I've responded in a negative way, or thought about because sometimes I'll have somebody will give me an idea of something and I'll immediately like think about all the reasons why that's not going to work. And I won't realize it until after I've said it, and then it's like, now how do I backtrack that, or how do I pull that back in and make a note for next time not to do that? And it gets a little challenging from time to time.
It has to be right in your conscious,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's why talking to yourself, right? Like, again, the gratitude practice, talking to yourself, you have to stop yourself and say, what am I grateful for? And if you just do that, let's say you start and do it once an hour, right? Then it becomes a pattern. So you want to create a pattern in your mind that then slowly will get away from that negativity, or if you start going towards the negative path, it recognizes that, because you do want to start recognizing it in yourself. And it depending now how deeply ingrained it is in your being, like whether you came from a really negative family and it's just, you live that way for 20 or 30 years, don't expect it to change overnight. Again, just start small and start building up, and then ask the people around you to, gently remind you that you're going down the negative pathway. I had a colleague that went to work for a company and it was wonderful and she enjoyed it. And then she just recently left and went to another company. And she said that after, reading one of my articles, she recognized, oh my God, I'm so much happier here at her new company, even though the people, let's say the job requirements are the same. Everybody was, it wasn't a hostile work environment in either case. But what was different was the support around her in her new job. Her, whether it was the food stations, whether it was the color of the environment, the incorporations of nature, it just uplifted her naturally to want to be in a more positive state. And that's why, neuroaesthetics is gaining popularity, because it does affect your nervous system, and that goes back to, again, what you put into your environment does affect your being, right? So just like if you put candy and cookies, it's going to affect your physical weight, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Pounds when you're eating candy and cookies. Okay, for your soul being, you can't expect to live at that highest, positivity if you're putting in your environment things that stress out your nervous system. Mm-hmm. So your nervous system is directly related to your emotions, which are directly related to your soul's essence.
Yeah, absolutely. What you're saying here reminds me of, there was a guy I heard a story about named Doug Dietz, and he made MRI machines. And um, he had this new design for an MRI machine. They created it. They put the first sample out in a hospital, and he went to tour to go see his machine in action, I guess you would say. And the first patient he saw come was a child, a pediatric patient who freaked out, who hated, like he was terrified of this machine. Because if you've ever seen an MRI machine, it's a big circle, you have to lay down into it, and it makes this loud noise, and it was just terrifying. So he went back and was just completely like, upset about, I created this MRI machine and it's just freaking out everybody. So what he did is he made a new model. It looks the exact same, works the exact same, except for it's painted to look like a pirate ship. And it plays sounds and music that's soothing, or then he has another one that looks like a spaceship, like an astronaut, and it's colorful and it's bright. And on the pirate ship, when they put smells into the room that makes it smell like you're at the beach in the ocean. And now when they bring children in there, they see this and they pitch it as like an adventure. You get to go and, and get in the pirate ship or get in the spaceship. And, just changing that aesthetic has changed the anxiety level of the patients.
Isn't that, that is a perfect example of neuroaesthetics at its best, right? You take two situations. One looks very scary and the nervous system automatically reacts, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you're an adult or a child, the severity probably varies. But look at what happens when you walk into a room that's smelling like vacation, that is brightly colored or looks like a spaceship. And that's a simple thing to do. It doesn't cost a lot of money. You're not tearing down a whole building. You're not reinventing a whole machine. That I love that example. I'm going to take that example and use it from now. I love it.
So,
they're looking at hospitals and can you really get healthy even though the doctor, let's say, has given you, a new heart, new lungs or whatever, if you're in a dull, gray, buzzing with glaring lights at you? Are you going to really fully recuperate in that environment? And the answer is no. You're not.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And, you see that in the workplace too, just changing the scenery a little bit and going from, a lot of old offices used to be like so white and sterile with the fluorescent lights and just, it wasn't creative at all. But if you just paint the walls a little bit, maybe you remove the cubes and put the desks facing each other so you have more collaboration, and it just completely changes the mood of the employees and the creativity levels and things that people can do.
Absolutely. And that's what you need to do for your home too. Mm-hmm. That's why I say your home environment is important as well. And, again, whether you live in an apartment or you own your own home, there are little things that you can do. It's not like you have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars or even $1,000. Get a can of paint and paint in a bright, cheerful color, that when you walk into that room, your nervous system automatically lights up. Mm-hmm. And you're the only one. That's why let's get to know ourselves at a deep level. That's when I ask, how well do you know yourself? And I like sports, or, my passion is, my children, or, okay, but how about yourself? Like, who are you at your essence? You're kind, you're loving. Okay. Are you acting that way? Is where your focus is on a daily basis? Who are you at your essence? And I truly believe at our essence, we're all loving, kind individuals. Now, some have to take layers and layers off to get there. So the sooner you start, the better off you are. Just like the practices that you're instilling in your children now will go so far into their adulthood. Mm-hmm. So far.
I hope so anyway.
Well.
Do you tell us a little bit about how Quantum Sense works when it comes to helping somebody and how they go about,
Yeah. So I would, I customize programs for corporations, and whether it's, right now it's smaller groups, I'd love to, incorporate year-long programs, but that has not come to fruition yet. But I have a process that's ground, elevate, evolve. So you ground into your senses, you elevate into your energetic being, and then you evolve into your soul's essence. So, and underneath each of those pillars is practices to get to that place. But we've got to ground before we elevate. So we all want to say, okay, I'm going to live in this, elevated state. Well, you have to ground yourself and have a solid foundation. So what is your foundation? What does your foundation look like? That goes to your environment and your senses. Then we elevate into our energetic being. So what does that entail? I'm not talking about your physical being. I'm not talking about your mental being. I'm talking about your energetic essence. And I come from the belief that we are all energy and energy is surrounding us. So what does that mean? And that tags into your nervous system and into your emotions. And then I say, okay, that evolves into your soul's highest self. So what does that look like to you? Mm-hmm. And at the end, it's very simple. It's engaging in life in a love-based way, period. So are you fear-based? Are you love-based? Are you ego-based? Are you soul-based? That's what I talk to a lot of leaders about too. Are you leading from ego? Are you leading from soul? So it really is, yin and yang, positive, negative. It's that simple, but you have to really focus on it and do it with intent and consistency.
Yeah. It's ego is the enemy. That's that Ryan Holiday book. Yeah, think about you gotta get rid of that ego. Pam, this has been great. How can people connect with you online, learn more about Quantum Sense, and ask you questions if they have any?
Yeah, absolutely. I welcome any question. I welcome any conversation. I'm happy to have a 15, 20-minute conversation with anyone because I learn from that as well, and hope I give nuggets of inspiration. But you can go to my website at thequantumsense.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and you can find me on Substack.
Awesome. And I'll link those in the show notes too at geekleader.com so people can go there and click through. Pam, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I feel like I've learned a lot in this short time as well, and I'm sure our audience has too.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed our conversation.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to, click on their links, and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.